This is a Fox News alert. Big news in the excursion or the war in Iran. President Trump has been briefed after a fighter jet, an F-15, went down over Iran. Now, it went down in southwest Iran. This is the province closest to Karg Island. We are monitoring for updates and praying for our men and women who are there on the ground. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany here with my co-host, Emily Compagno. Also joining us, Tomi Lahren, co-host of The Big Weekend Show and host of Tomi Lahren is Fearless on Outkick. And Tiffany Smiley, former Washington State Senate candidate and Endeavor PAC founder, and Josh Ritter, Fox News contributor, criminal defense attorney, and co-host of the weekly Rap Sheet on Fox Nation. First, let's go straight to Jennifer Griffin, who has been gathering all of the latest details. Jennifer.
Kayleigh, what we can say is that the President of the United States, President Trump, has been briefed on this downed F-15E warplane that went down over southwestern Iran, not far from what we've been discussing a lot lately, Karg Island. This was in a province that is closest to Karg Island. Right now, we can confirm that a search and rescue operation is underway. It is a very risky daytime rescue operation. It's one of the reasons that we had been holding back some of the information that first came out on Iranian state television, showing the remains of some of the F-15E fighter jet that was broadcast. We didn't know at first whether that was Iranian propaganda. And now that we've confirmed that a search and rescue is underway for at least one of the two pilots, and the hope is that both of the pilots survived. But the Iranians have put out a reward for the capture of these pilots. This is a remote area. There are tribes that control this area. And again, we've seen that Pave Hawk helicopters, those are Air Force helicopters that specialize in search and rescue. There are videos taken of those Pave Hawks being refueled over the ground in this area. And we have seen also a visual of the seat from the F-15E fighter plane. It is empty. It looks like it was ejected, and there was a parachute next to the empty seat. But what that tells us, we don't know. We are awaiting a statement from CENTCOM. Kayleigh?
Jennifer, thank you very much. We will stick with you as updates continue through the hour. Let's broaden this out for a moment. Emily, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the human part of this. We have lost 13 service members overseas, heroes, many with young children, many in their young 20s, early 30s. And I just think if you're a family member and you have someone that could be anywhere close to this region, right now you're saying a lot of prayers. I said a prayer in my office, and our prayers are that this pilot, both of them, are recovered.
Indeed, they are covered in prayer by the entire nation, absolutely. This also calls into mind the danger and the commitment of those rescue missions. And I think about, for example, Colonel Tom Moe, who was flying in a combat sortie, also for the Air Force in Vietnam. And he was shot down while in an inverted tailspin, had the wherewithal to radio back to base to save the lives of all of the other pilots by saying, this issue that we thought was fixed with the plane is not, with the munitions. That is why he got one of 2 Silver Stars. He parachuted out and survived. But who didn't survive was the captain and pilot, Bob Wilkie, of the search and rescue plane. And Colonel Moe was on the radio with him, and they were talking to each other about the rescue when he heard him being shot down. And the first question, 6 years later, after he had been a POW, that he asked his rescuing American forces was, what was the name of that rescue pilot? This is a brotherhood that these pilots have, and with those seeing rescue, and the commitment of the United States to reclaim these pilots, to take them back, to save them before they fall into these enemy hands. The thought of this reward being sent out is absolutely horrific, because the reality is they are our blood and treasure, and our commitment to getting them back cannot ever be overstated. So my prayers join yours and the rest of the country's for these pilots, and certainly just to emphasize that the United States' primary mission at this point is to get those pilots back safe and sound.
No doubt about it. You know, Tomi, as we look at this, I'm looking at Peter Doocy, who says the president has been briefed. We know a CENTCOM statement could come at any moment. We will show you that statement. The moment it comes out, Tomi, And as we just heard from Trace's guest, there are 2 Marine expeditionary units in the region. So we are hopeful. These are the best of the best. We are hopeful for a recovery of these 2 pilots.
Certainly the best of the best. Oftentimes when we talk about the excursion, the war, whatever you want to call it, we talk about the gas prices. We talk about ground troops. We talk about how this could evolve. Is it lasting too long? And then something like this happens, and you remember the real human cost of this, which Emily so perfectly pointed out, that these people have families that are worried about them, that are concerned for them. We also have the best military on the face of the earth. President Trump reiterated that the other night. He also doubled down on saying we understand the human cost of war. And that's a reminder. And I'm confident in our military. My co-host on Big Weekend, Joey Jones, obviously a former Marine, he's been talking about this since this started, that as we talk about the gas prices and we talk about not wanting to have another endless war, you got to bring it back into the situation on the ground.
No doubt. And Josh, we were very cautious in bringing our viewers this information for good reason. We know Iranian media has come out and falsely said a few times that they have had a downed U.S. aircraft. Those have been false reports. It cannot be trusted. But this is information we now know has been communicated to the commander-in-chief and in real time is being analyzed.
Yeah, and it adds to the urgency of what the Marines are doing right now to get in there, because the Iranians are letting people know that there's a downed plane and that they're going to be coming after them. There's a bounty on these pilots. Yes, again, I'm going to echo what everybody said. Our first concern here is, are they alive? I keep on hearing that we're talking about at least one. I don't know where that information is coming from, that there's some question as to whether or not both pilots have survived. But I will tell you this, to Emily's point, there is no other fighting force on the face of this earth that is up to the task of going in there and rescuing these men but the United States Marine Corps, and that's who's after this right now. So that's first and foremost to figure that out. And then I'd like to hear the information, because I think it could change the whole way we view this, on whether or not this was a downed plane taken down by military action or whether or not this was some sort of mechanical misfunction. But I'm sure we'll be getting that information soon.
And Tiffany, we're told that this is a remote area. The tribes are in control, and it is near Karg Island. That is that strategic island that is key to the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we are going to have to watch. And let's not forget that these pilots are extremely trained at evasion and survival and evasion. We have the best military in the world, and they are the most prepared people on the planet to survive something like this. I think on the flip side, that is the good news. But let's not forget that freedom is not free. And I think we read the headlines, when President Trump took action to take on Iran. For 50 years, presidents have talked about doing this. And he's the first one to do it and face the scrutiny of instant gratification. Everyone wants to know, is it 2 weeks? Is it 3 weeks? Give us a timeline. But he understood that it was going to take risk, and it was going to take some short-term hardships for a longer-term gain for our country, for my 3 boys' future, certainly. So I think this just shows that freedom is not free, and things have to be fought for and earned. And we have the best and the brightest in this country that are prepared. You think of those going in to rescue these pilots, they're trained, highly trained, the most trained people in the world to take this on. So my thoughts and prayers are with them. And this is the greatest country in the world, but it doesn't come without a cost.
Emily, and freedom is not free. As we await, hopefully, for a good resolution and conclusion to this, again, we have no indication of where these pilots are at the moment. But we do want to think about those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. Alex Kleiner, a 33-year-old Alabama airman, left behind 2 7-month-old twins, and also another little toddler. These are people with names and families, and you understand that more than anyone, having spoken at so many military events and interacted with our service members.
Thank you for that. And we all have. I mean, we all share the burden, the compassion, the condolences, and the gratitude for the ultimate sacrifice. And, that throughout history and now it's so prevalent, like that's a generational impact. I feel throughout my blood the ultimate sacrifice of my great-great uncle, Joe, in World War I, who lays buried in Suresnes, France. Now, that is not this. This is a developing situation, clearly, but the point remains that you're right, that thus far we've already lost our blood and treasure. I am comforted, however, slightly by the fact that we have a commander-in-chief who appreciates and supports our military. I was asked the other day what fills in the gap between facts for me in this situation. And what fills in the gap is my faith in our commander-in-chief, the duly elected representative of the people, that he has prioritized, given voice back, given grace back, given priority back to the safety and security of our soldiers. And being a family member of someone who deploys under this commander-in-chief, it feels a whole lot different than it did under the last one. And I know that many share my confidence in this commander-in-chief, in the Secretary of War, to prioritize the safety of our military, including getting back those pilots safely.
All right, let's bring back in Jennifer Griffin. Jennifer, I am reading some of what you've sent out about videos on X and Air Force involved in the search and rescue. What's the latest?
Well, I think it's important to point out that what we are seeing and what we would expect in this situation is that the Air Force and their Pave Hawk helicopters, these are specialized special forces helicopters that are designed for search and rescue. In this, they can carry it out in day as well as night. It's still daylight over there, so it is very risky mission for, and suggests that there is a sense that these pilots are alive and that they are trying to find them before any Iranian forces are able to take them. Again, these pilots of the F-15E would have been trained in SEER training, that's survival training. We have seen images suggesting that at least one of the pilots ejected because we see the seat and we see the parachute. And it's an empty seat and an empty parachute, suggesting that they may have either been taken away or walked away on their own. And then we also know from Israeli sources that Israeli officials are saying that they have called off airstrikes in this part of southwestern Iran. The province in question, it's called the Kogiluya and Boyer Ahmed province. It's one of 31 provinces. It's close to Karg Island, as we've mentioned. But the Israelis are saying they've called off airstrikes in that area while this search and rescue takes place. There are some indications that at least one of the pilots may have survived, but we are awaiting a statement from CENTCOM, and there's a lot of information being put out right now through Iranian state channels. They obviously want to see this and present this as a win to their people. It is a great propaganda victory for them, but we don't know whether it was a mechanical failure or whether this F-15E was shot down by IRGC forces. What we can say is that there is still a danger to pilots flying over Iran, even though we've heard repeatedly from the Pentagon that they have air supremacy over Iran. There are still many surface-to-air missile systems that are still in existence, as well as Iranian ballistic missiles that we've seen. There were 3 waves of ballistic missiles fired at Israel in the last hour or so. So they still have a lethal capability. It's one of the reasons that the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. It's extremely dangerous for the pilots who are flying, and we see now that this is the first F-15 to go down inside Iran. That is really kind of a miracle if you think of the 11,000 plus strike missions that have been carried out and the amount of U.S. warplanes that have been flying over Iran. It is really on day 32 or wherever we are in this war, the fact that there weren't more incidents like this is really quite stunning. But right now the focus is on rescuing these pilots, getting them back safely, and preventing Iran from a propaganda wind.
You know, Jen, just quickly, I'm looking at a map that was just sent out of this southwest province. Boyer Ahmed is one of the names of the province, and it looks to be right there, as you noted, on the Persian Gulf near Karg Island. But you noted that tribes operate here, that it's a remote area. How likely is it that IRGC would have quick access to this area?
I think you have to assume, Kayleigh, that the IRGC has quick access to that entire 1,000-mile coastline. One of the reasons it's so hard to even consider taking Karg Island is that if the MU, the Marine Expeditionary Unit that is in the Arabian Sea right now but has not crossed through the Strait of Hormuz, if they were to go up that 1,000-mile coastline, it's a very narrow coastline where they could could be targeted easily by cruise missiles as well as drones. It is still a very contested area. That is why it's so hard to consider opening the Strait of Hormuz. It's not an easy mission. If it were an easy mission, the Navy would have done it by now. So you have to assume that those areas, there are still a lot of units that are moving around quietly and trying to hide their missile capability. And now we see that one F-15E has gone down in that area.
Jennifer Griffin, thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.